Welcome back. We are back to discuss episode 7 of House of a Dragon, Driftmark, a very momentous episode.
Indeed, and it opens on a very sad note. It's got the burial of Lena Valarian, who we saw incinerate herself at the end of the previous episode. And it's quite a gathering there. You've got all of her extended family, and you've got the king and his side of the family, and you've got Otto Hightower back as the Hand of the King, and they're all gathered at Driftmark. And her uncle Vaemond is officiating, hinting at his dissatisfaction with the parentage of Rhaenyra's sons as he's doing so, and her brother Lena is falling apart with his grief over his sister's death, and there's some reconciliation between Daemon and Viserys. That night, then, Corlys and Rhaenys argue over the fact that she wishes him to name Baela as his heir, putting aside the farce that they pretend to believe in, that Rhaenyra's children are by Laenor. But Corlys reiterates his ambition for his legacy and that blood doesn't matter to history, it's the name you carry that matters.
That same night, Daemon and Rhaenyra finally consummate their long-held passion for one another, and then witness the return of a dragon in flight, Valgar, the great dragon that had belonged to Lena. Unbeknownst to them, young Aemon has gone and claimed the dragon. When he lands at high tide, Baela and Rhaena confront him, and the latter, who was complaining, that her father doesn't love her because she doesn't have a dragon, said, I was going to claim her. And Jace and Luke as well, Rhaenyra's older sons, are there. A scuffle breaks out when the girls attack Aemon. He fights back, and then young Luke ends up taking a knife dropped by his brother, and he slashes Aemon's face, making him lose his left eye.
And following this confrontation, we have obviously a momentous moment between Alicent and Rhaenyra over what has happened between their sons. And Rhaenyra is demanding that Aegon be questioned over where he heard the claim that the sons are bastards, because it's one of the things he flings out as they are arguing. And Alicent, in turn, is demanding the eye of one of Rhaenyra's sons. Trying even to demand Criston Cole to bring Lucerys' eye to her. Viserys finally says that anyone who questions the birth of Rhaenyra's sons will have their tongue cut out. Alicent then pulls a dagger from Viserys and attacks Rhaenyra, whereas Aemond says that the exchange was worth it because he's gained a dragon. He's one tough little shit.
Yeah. In this, apparently he has the support of his grandfather, who privately tells Alicent that he's pleased to see she's willing to try and win the fight, and commends Aemond for getting Aemond for getting Valgar to her side, saying that the rogue was right and that the dragon is worth 1,000 times what he paid for it. He's clearly seeing war in the future. Later, on the other hand, has come to realize that he's been an awful husband. He's been so caught up in carousing with Carl Corey and also just grieving over his sister. And he swears to Rhaenyra that he's going to do better. He'll support her to make sure she sits the Iron Throne.
Alicent, when she's sailing back to King's Landing, we see her speaking with Loras, and he offers to give her the eye she wants, but she declines. For now, anyway, because she now seems much more open to perhaps needing his services in the future. And while we see this, Laenor is trying to rededicate himself to Rhaenyra as her husband and going to help her. She still seems to determine that Laenor is not going to be the man she needs by her side, because when she and Daemon watch Alicent's ship sailing away, she tells him that she wants to marry him. He points out that Laenor kind of has to be out of the picture for that to be possible, and she says, I know. And she then talks about not wanting to be a tyrant, but Daemon tells her that a ruler needs to be feared as well. You need love, but you still always need the fear. And in a montage, we then see Daemon apparently arranging for Carl to kill Laenor, and Rhaenyra and Daemon marrying in a Valerian ceremony. However, it seems that rather than having Laenor killed, they have arranged for Carl and Laenor to disappear together, rowing a boat towards a waiting ship at sea, whereas everyone believes that Laenor has been killed because a servant's body has been placed in his stead in the fireplace and burnt up. So that's the end of that, and we have a few things to say about that.
Yes, we do. Now we're going to discuss some changes, and again, like choices they make sometimes, or not exactly a change, but I think this time everything is a change.
Oh yes.
Valerian Burials. We were given this very elaborate ritual funeral for Lena at the seat of a sea of Valerian words and this sarcophagus of her effigy on it.
Clearly some ritual words, and I think some of it seems to be things that you are the form of the burial.
Yeah, and then we also see as the sarcophagus goes down into the water, as it lands, that there's other sarcophagi, I guess, or down there. So this is not a one-off. This has been done before. It is a traditional. This is not what George has shown in the books for the Valarians. We actually have, I guess, 3 examples of sort of funerals for Valarians in Fire and Blood, and Lena. Lena's burned on a pyre. The sea snake, when he dies, he won't live forever.
Spoiler, sorry, he dies at some point.
At some point, not necessarily in the time frame of a TV show, but maybe he does. It's hard to say sometimes when we're talking about this, like who is the audience?
Yeah,
but anyways,
I mean, yes, he's not. He's not immortal.
You know. Yeah, he's not immortal, of course. Yeah, so you know, and he's buried he's taken out to sea on his ship, the ancient sea snake that made his great journeys on, and buried at sea. And there's one other where their body is entombed, and there's an effigy and so on, and that's it. So
we don't actually know Lena's burial in.
We don't know the exact details of hers. I don't think. I mean, hers. They come back for. I don't think it's actually said if it's a pyre. No. It probably is, though.
I think that, in general, if we look at burial customs historically speaking, they tended to be fairly homogeneous within a culture for a time period. You could have differences for status and so on, but I suspect that the overall idea is that most of the Valerians had cremations, right, whether they had dragons or not. Fire was so important to the whole culture. With the 14 flames and the volcano, I suspect that cremations were the thing for all Valerians.
I think it's very common. I mean, the sea snake is given.
I think the sea snake. I mean, it's his ship. The sea snake is all. I think that is a unique one because of his. Yeah. He may have left wishes for. I want to be buried like this.
Yeah, because it's also buried at sea. There's not clear that the ship is burned. It's not
like it's not like a Norse or a Viking.
It's just sort of scuttled, perhaps. It's not clear. It doesn't really say. So as far as that goes, this very ritual thing is their own thing.
Yes, and the tomb one is unusual, but it seems to. The idea of the effigy, I mean, there's a particular circumstance, I think, where somebody wanted to make a point. So that could have something to do with
the tomb, anyways. I'm not sure if there's an effigy.
But yes, that somebody wanted to make a point. So
after that, I think I should say that there's Bela and Rena being involved in a quarrel with Aemons.
Yes, I mean, they're not actually at all involved. There is no sense of that Rena was supposed to claim Vagar or anything like that. We don't really see dragons being inherited in that way. It's very much a personal choice. It's up to the dragon to some extent whether they are going to accept the rider. I think perhaps maybe she would have gone for, but I always had the impression of Rena being, I mean, here she kind of throws the first punch, but I always had the impression of Bela is the wilder one, and Rena is a little more ladylike, and
yeah. I mean, a lot of it obviously is in the book. I don't think her egg has hatched yet at this stage when this conflict happens. I can't quite recall, but obviously she has an egg. We see it. She has an egg. She's holding it, and it hasn't hatched yet. It will, at least in the books, it will eventually hatch. I don't recall exactly the time frame and circumstance.
And obviously, we've got the time frames being shifted around for ages.
Even the events here are changed.
Yes, because I mean, at this point, actually, when Aemon goes to attempt to go to Vagar, which is actually due to something that Viserys says. because he's been suggesting to him that now they are where they are on. I think because they're actually on Dragonstone, I think, not on High Tide, maybe. Because he says something about him claiming a dragon if he's bold enough, and then he goes and decides to try for Valgar, which was not the intention. And so when he does that, it's actually little Joffrey who sees it first, who is a 3-year-old, but infant Joffrey did not see anyone sneaking off.
And not only does he see it, I mean, he actually tries to stop him before he even gets to get Valgar.
Like, very precocious 3-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with a 3-year-old doing that. I mean, a little 3-year-old Rickon grabbed a sword and was swinging it. So, 3-year-olds are not complete. They're able to have little tantrums and so on. So,
well, it's true.
And he does get shoved into a pile of dragon droppings. And then he goes to fetch his brothers while Aemond's sort of on Valgar.
But it is correct that he basically does this one flight, and then when he comes down again, there's the confrontation with the two sons. So obviously they had the girls there. They had shown them they wanted to involve them more. So those are some of the smaller tweaks in this episode. But then we have Lena's death. Now, at first when we watched the episode, we actually thought that, wow, they are making a very bold change here. They are having Rhaenyra directly involved in the death, and this is entirely, there is no suggestion of that in the books.
We have 3 accounts of what happens in the books, or three sort of levels of detail. Because what everyone agrees is that Lena was killed murdered over in a quarrel of some sort in Spicetown, and it's all open. There's no question that he is dead. He's stabbed. He's not burned beyond recognition.
No, he's dead as a doornail.
Septon Eustace, being a Septon, says, well, he's just killed by a household knight. It doesn't go into more details. Mushroom tells us that it's Carl Corey. It gives us the name of the household knight and says, quarreling over the fact that Lena had started to grow tired of him and was turning his attention to a young squire.
Eustace obviously did not imagine Lena and Carl having the relationship that they have. I think that was. And
then finally we have the third account, which suggests, well, yes, Carl Corey did it, but he was probably hired by Daemon Targaryen to kill Lena, and then was
disappeared.
Disappeared and had his throat cut and was fed to the sea. Actually, it's actually Mushroom is that version, and it's actually Orwyle who gives us the
less salacious version.
The less salacious is the name. That's probably
the salacious version is always Mushroom. The more lurid the details are, it's always Mushroom. So we felt that, wow, okay, they're making this change, having Rhaenyra being directly involved together with Daemon, so they're going with part of the Mushroom account, and this will mitigated some of our concerns that, well, mainly me. I'm still having concerns about how Rhaenyra is coming across. I feel that so far she has made some youthful mistakes, but for the most part she seems like a very nice person. And I mean, she's trying to do what Viserys wanted. She's minding the prophecy, and she's being fairly thoughtful about things. Perhaps not having the 3 children that look nothing like their father, but that's what it is. So I have more concerns than you about this so far. You want to wait and see where it goes, and I can agree. I'm just having a bad feeling that we are getting an account where it's all, oh, look what the evil chroniclers did to the women, rather than, well, they made that there is 2 sides to the story, or that Rhaenyra did have, she was not the perfect potential queen. She had her bad sides. I mean, she was supposed to be fairly hot-tempered and a bit vindictive, and not forgetting a slight and these things. And I can't see all of this just being the biased narrative.
No, I definitely agree. This is the first time that, because we were surprised, because we thought, okay, like, for sure, I mean, it's a gimme. It's like, Lena's going to get killed.
Yeah.
Like, and then, this odd choice having him burned, but I guess he kind of thematic thing. He's been, he burned to death or
Yeah.
by is it sort of a
There were some odd phrases in the when he said set
But
him free, and then they
came too
started
close-
talking about how this
came
will
too
make
close to being to the Targaryens and got burned. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's like, okay, it's all they're just they didn't want to show Spice Town. You actually see some of the shots. Actually,
Yeah.
you see beyond the lights of the
Yeah.
town. I don't know if that's supposed to be Spice Town or Hull. They haven't really said, but so okay, but then yeah,
to me it felt a lot like what the showrunners and producers and writers and end up here is that they wanted kind of to have their cake and eat it, because as we see in the conversation with Rhaenyra and Daemon, people will now believe they are capable of things like this. They are capable of murdering her prior husband, and they will not know, they will fear what else they might do. They will have that fear that he is talking about. They will be unpredictable. They won't be able to trust them, but they will know that they did nothing wrong. And well, other than letting Laena's parents think that he's dead, and that poor servant kind of got his neck snapped. But on the scale of things, they didn't actually murder Laena. So they'll get the chroniclers being able to portray Rhaenyra in a bad light because they think she murdered Laena. But the viewers will know that she's actually, she knows that she needs Daemon by her side for the coming conflict. Laena doesn't really want to be in that position, even if he's saying that he's gonna try. So let's give Laena and Carl a bit of a fairy tale ending here. They get to run away together, at least for now. And with Rhaenyra, the viewers think they're oh so clever. She and Daemon together, and they haven't really done that much wrong.
Yes, I mean, I understand the concern. I certainly when they've talked about being very faithful to the story of Fire and Blood, I've taken it at face value. I've said, okay, they've had to compress. I can see how they made things for narrative choices, like having Alicent and Rhaenyra be childhood friends, be similar ages, try to complicate the relationship. It's not just Alicent, as soon as she has a kid, suddenly it's being, hey, my kid should be on the throne, my kid should be on the throne. There's something that there is some, I understand all that. But this one is like, it's not, they have completely changed. Like, Laena is not killed. It doesn't matter if but historians think he was killed, because there's no question that he's dead, right? So to me, my problem is if they're going to say, the historians don't know everything, they don't have everything right. If they start doing this too often, where like, nothing the historian says, you should trust, like, at any point we can say, they're completely wrong, we've tricked them. Then I start to feel like it's not really faithful, they're doing their own version of a story. Not doing their own version, they're just basically disregarding the story to create something that they like. So but one thing I'm not gonna...
No, I mean, yes, I know. I keep saying that because I said I feel betrayed by this. That is, that's too strong.
I find that very strong.
But
betrayed is like...
Well, yes. Well, I'm a bit more passionate about these things.
I mean, but to me, it's like, I guess you might feel misled by
a little bit stabbed in the back, not with a knife or like anything, but at least a fork or something like that.
Poke gently from...
Poke gently from behind. Yes. What are you gonna say?
Yes.
Let's not go into that.
I would say, again, is that to me, it's like, it does feel a little cheap. There's so many questions. What happens if Carl and Lena have a falling out and Carl wants back? What if they run out of money and Carl says, hey, let's go and blackmail them? What if someone in Essos hears of it and sends word?
We don't want questions about any future children from this marriage now being like, hey, you can't actually be married because your prior husband is... sea smoke is a big problem. We have no example of a dragon just kind of, my rider took off, I'm just gonna hang out here and pretend he's dead. Did Lena have a little chat with him? Okay, could you please pretend I'm dead now and be a little sad? Because Sea Smoke in the book is supposed to have another rider further on. We've never seen a dragon take a new rider when the previous rider is not dead.
The evidence is that...
They have one rider at a time, and that's it. There is a concern, we've seen speculations, because some of this leaked there was talk on the internet about this plot development leaking. And people said, well, maybe we will see Lena again taking the position of Seasmoke's next writer.
Well, there's a role that Seasmoke plays later on, and we're not gonna. We don't want to get too.
No, we don't. But
yes, that they could. I mean, that's partly. I can hold off a little bit because they can we will fix things sort of. But
I don't think that's a fix because it
changes. It's a radical change.
It's a radical change.
So
I'm very disappointed at the very least, and I'm very concerned.
Radical change, but at the same time, what I can say is if what they're doing is what I think they might be doing, which is they're going to actually realize they have too many characters in the second season, but they're going to need to get rid of some, and they might decide to cut this character or combine them into somebody else. That still leaves a role for Seasmoke with Lena showing up. But that raises so many questions. It'll have to be something the historians don't know it was him on Seasmoke, and then he takes off again, or what There's a lot of questions, and I guess
one question, in addition to this, only half the body was burned.
Yes.
Don't Valerian carpets match the drapes? Maybe they didn't.
My recollection for the books is that at least Dany's do. So one supposes that it ought to be the case. However, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure Dany has white or silver gold eyebrows, where unlike Emilia Clarke's character, Emilia Clarke, and unlike basically all the others, I think maybe Rhaenyra is given light brown golden eyebrows. Maybe I don't know if that's Emilia's natural or a color, but otherwise they just go with dark.
Daemon doesn't have any.
And Daemon doesn't have any. I mean, he has. His is basically very blonde.
So I guess he's got Targaryen eyebrows.
It's a silly thing, but they made the point only the upper body. I also wonder why those guards were trying with using pokers to get the body out. They'd show the legs and just pull the legs. Which I guess I realized afterwards, looking at it again and realizing is...
They made the point of the shoes.
The boots, yes. Look at the boots, And then... Because that's the other thing, when I first saw the guy running down the beach...
Why is he barefoot?
Yeah, the guy's barefoot. Why, this is the helper they've got helping Carl. And then I see. And it was I don't know, we were very blindsided by it because...
Yeah, I mean, there were things, like I said, I thought that the phrasing the first time I heard Daemon talking to Rhaenyra and saying...
The gift thing, I guess.
Well, yeah, and also the fact that, they will think we are capable, but we will know. And it's okay, you will know you murdered him, so what's the difference? And they're like, okay, no, they will know that their conscience is fairly clean, minus a dead servant, but we don't count those, right?
And grieving parents.
Yeah, they figured it. They were already grieving, so we might just...
And children as well. I mean, Jace kind of knows, but Luke doesn't.
True.
So
they'll get over it.
Anyways, we'll see how it goes. I think hopefully the next episodes will clarify the question of Seasmoke, for example. I think it'd be great if they mention Seasmoke, whether Seasmoke, someone says, someone should try and claim Seasmoke, or, Seasmoke's still grieving for Lena and doesn't want to take a rider, and they don't really understand what's going on there. But anyways, that's it. We're now on to background.
Yes.
Background. Well, the big sort of cool thing we see at the end here is the Valerian marriage between Daemon and Rhaenyra. What we know from the book, George has never described it in detail. They're just said to be married or wed by blood and fire. We have one clear example of one actually in the histories. That's when Maegor took a second wife, Alice Haraway. That was against the will of his brother and the will of the faith, but not the will of his mother, Visenya, who was the officiant of said wedding. It's not at all clear, actually. The other thing that came to mind is they have this priest who I believe on his chest has one of those Valerian letters, which kind of looks vaguely Greek-inspired, but so he's a sort of Valerian priest and I don't think George imagines that there's a Valerian priesthood hanging around longer.
Maybe they're imagining that, or maybe they just dressed up one of the dragon keepers.
You know what? That's not a bad idea, because the dragon keepers would also probably be people who would try to follow Valerian religion, and they might, the dragon keepers marry. They might. I don't know.
That might be a
Actually,
hereditary thing.
I had to assume the DVDs are going to have some section on just the Dragon Keepers and whatever they've made up. I mean, they're very different from as we discussed before, from the books. And the books are just an order of guards. They're not. You enter them as in service. You're not. It's not this monk cult thing.
And they don't go around speaking Valerian.
Yeah.
Presumably, I'm gonna guess that at this time, probably the idea is that most of the commands for dragons are probably still in Valerian. That would actually make sense, given that that's still what Danny ends up using and what seems to have been passed down. That you say Dracarys basically to get them to flame things. So. But yes, it's an interesting interpretation. There's not that much fire, I suppose. There's a fair bit of blood involved. I mean, the fire is around them.
Behind them, yes. It doesn't seem directly involved, which is a little odd. I would have thought like putting some blood in the fire or, cutting off a lock of your hair and burning it or something. But it's there anyways.
Definitely bloody.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of blood dripping around there, so... In the scene, we also see a maester with the children, and we're going to guess that this is Maester Gerardus, our first glimpse of him, who's going to serve Rhaenyra on Dragonstone as her maester.
Yeah.
And
he plays more of a role later. He's a role as well. I mean, they've advanced things with Viserys's health a lot because. At some point, I believe he needs to have some fingers amputated, and I think Gerardus is the one who actually does it. And he's very capable. He's a very capable, very skilled surgeon, and is credited with saving his life. But he's lost most of the arm now.
Yes, they've had him be sickly early. I think partially to have Alicent and Otto have more of a role in things. There's not really that much. I mean, we could have put the Valarian burial bit here as well, but it bleeds into each other. And but there's a little bit to talk about dragons in this episode, at least. We see some discussion here again with the whole thing about Rhaena saying that she, was going to be the one to claim Vargar. That this is. One of the ways that you can bond a dragon. Obviously, we see Aemond doing it, rather than having an egg placed in his cradle. I mean, his didn't hatch, I guess. They must have placed one there when it didn't hatch. So then you can go and bond an adult dragon. An adult dragon that had a rider before, or an adult dragon that hasn't had a rider before.
It could also be a young dragon, but also it doesn't have to be an adult dragon. It can be a dragon that was not born from an egg in your cradle, basically.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to do that, and I don't know if because they start at a point to do this. This is not something that we see them doing from Aegon the Conqueror.
Certainly, the egg in the cradle is not actually. It was not a tradition until after the Targaryens came to rule Westeros.
Yeah. So in how they did it in Valyria, who says? But they seem to have had the idea that this improves the chances of you bonding with the dragon if it's been placed in your cradle.
The other thing is we see quite a lot of dragons in this episode, including one at least. We think it's not absolutely clear, but in fact, and this fits the book. It's mentioned that there were so many dragons on Driftmark. It was Driftmark where the funeral happened.
Yes, of course.
That it was as Valyria had been reborn. So.
But I guess there must have been unclaimed dragons as well for Viserys to make that comment about.
Well, we know there are unclaimed dragons.
So they must be hanging out on Driftmark, not just Dragonstone.
I guess they might fly around.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was referring to the fact they were close to Dragonstone and they can go visit. So for certain, we saw Caraxes flying.
Yeah.
We saw Syrax flying. Yeah. I believe Syrax is the one that's flying and then decides to land.
Yes.
Dreamfire, which we saw, people thought, and I think now is confirmed, is a sort of a dark, maybe a dark
the
black
one we
purple.
see Aemond approaching in the dragon pit.
I think it's the same one, but sitting. So Syrax lands beside it, I think. Of course, we'll see Valgar.
Quite a lot of Valgar in this episode, yes.
And then there is a dragon that has to be Sunfire, which without any
Yes, it's interesting. The other sitting dragon, when we have, or possibly one of the flying ones, right?
No, it was the sitting dragon.
It's a sitting
There's
dragon.
there's a
Doesn't look super golden in that shot, but it is a fairly desaturated shot.
Yes, and I mean, I'm pretty certain the one about Lando was Cyrax, and this one had the horns were very different. I recall there's some concept art floating around. I think they had those shirts or those jackets that have sort of graphic design versions of a dragon's, and it looks very similar. So it looks smaller than the others as well, would fit the age.
Certainly a lot smaller than if it's Dreamfire sitting up there. So
then we also have one more actually. It's unclear if the ones we see flying above high tide. I mean, for sure one is Caraxes, but it's not clear if the other is Sea Smoke or Malaise. It's too far away to see. The tail could fit either of them. Malaise has a tail that just tapers down to a point. Sea Smoke has a long, flat kind of paddle shape.
Yeah.
Unlike not like the ones like Danny's dragons and a lot of the others that have a sort of shorter, with spiky paddle. This is more of a. I can't tell really. Which
No, it's too distant, and Malaise, seen close up, has a very strong red color.
Yeah.
But again, it's a little desaturated, a little further away, so you can't quite tell. So anyway, we already know that Aegon has claimed Sunfire, so that's not a surprise. It's perhaps a little surprise that they're just giving a passing glimpse and not mentioning it. But Dreamfire, we haven't actually had it mentioned that Helena, Alicent and Viserys' daughter, who's going to marry Aegon, as we see them talking about in this episode, and we see more of her being a little peculiar, or he calls her an idiot, but that's clear that she's not. But she's caught up. She's talking about black and green thread and dragons of flesh weaving dragons of cloth, and she's definitely supposed to have dreams, I think.
Yeah, no, she's seeing the future of rival Targaryen banners, I think.
And so it seems clear that she has actually claimed Dreamfire. That is her dragon in the books. Dreamfire, who was Alyssa Targaryen's previously. But they have made no mention of her having a dragon, or
these are it's just odd. It's just because it has to be the case because we see the three dragons flying away.
Yes, we see when the ship with Alicent and the children leave, we see two dragons already flying above it. That has to be Sunfire and Dreamfire. Those are the only ones that belong to the Greens. And then we see Aemon coming after on the massive lumbering Vanguard and kind of taking off as a heavy bomber.
Well, I guess that's it, really, for this episode. This a big surprise for us in this episode, which we kind of unexpected. It took a while to digest it. I'm just concerned that if they keep doing this one, like, okay, all the historians have it completely wrong. If they do that too often, it's not going to be a faithful
and I'm also
edition.
not sure what the motivation for it is, in the sense that
We have to wait until we see the...
Yes, is it about the fact, as you said, that they want to be able to have Lena fill in for a character they might cut? Or is it because they felt, we've killed too many people this season, let's give them
some person a happy ending.
Ending, which is not the House of the Dragon. It really isn't the Dance of the Dragons. Happy endings aren't...
what they say.
We saw complaints after the 5th episode, right? The wedding is the 5th episode.
Oh, yes.
That they killed off Joffrey Lonmouth.
Which is from the books.
Which is from the books, and the fact that, you killed a gay character again. Because not many of those survived on Game of Thrones, but then again, at the end, not many people survived in general. So
far more non-gay people have died than gay. It's a bit. Obviously, it's in terms of like, okay, well, you have two gay people and they both die, whereas there's 20 straight people and half of them die. Well, then it's a percentage thing. But regardless, it is.
We don't know. We don't know what it is that motivated the change. But I'm not on the fence about this change. I think it's a bad change, regardless of the reasoning, really. And I hope we don't see more in the vein of it.
Yeah, too many of these fake outs would be
But it doesn't have to be a fake out. But
fake out with we're,
Oh,
we're,
oh,
we're
yes.
faithful to the history, wink, wink, and it's like,
Yes, and we're going to make Rhaenyra keep looking good by having any bad things actually not be
her fault, yeah.
her fault.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I'm still otherwise. I mean, like a lot of his episodes I thought very good.
Yes.
So
I
it's
like
just
the
weird
scene with Viserys and Daemon where he's trying to persuade him to come back to court, and he's
and Aemon claiming Valgar. The whole sequence of Valgar is really cool. It's the size of a dragon.
And Aemon's one tough little shit, like I said before.
Yeah,
Like I just got my eye cut out and like, nah,
I'm fine.
worth it. Yeah. I got a dragon.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week for the
Lord of the Tides.
The Lord of the Tides, which is an interesting title, which we guess is going to have to do a lot with the question of now if Lena are dead, who inherits the tides?
Yes, because Vaemond certainly was laying it on pretty thick in the funeral there about how, Baela and Rhaena were the true-born daughters of true Valarian blood.
Yeah, the blood was not run thin.
No, and he kept giving very pointed looks in the direction of
he's
Rhaenyra.
obviously got his suspicions and he's not happy about it.
I don't think we should call them suspicions, but anyway, we'll see you next week.